All right, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the podcast of Awesomeness. You're watching on the page of Revolution in Eastern Wrestling. I'm your host, Heather. Welcome back to another episode. This is episode number 29. And we're back again. This is a new week and new horizons. And, obviously, there is so much new stuff that we're going to be announcing on our page by the end of the week. I hope so. At least that's what my plan is. And there's so much new stuff that's going to be happening around the page and what's happening and so on. So stay tuned on the page for the new updates and so. But as of right now, we're live on our page with another guest. And this time, so basically, we had champions on our podcast before, but not only the guest today on my right, actually, this is a right or left? That's what it is. Yeah, that's a left. So on our podcast today, so we just don't have like a champion. She's actually a champion for two different companies at the same time. So let me introduce you to the two times, like it's actually considering as a two times world champion, right? Right, Miranda? So considered as a two times. Yeah. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's welcome the Women's World Heavyweight Champion from Tech Summer Pro Championship and also U.S. Championship Pro. So, reigning and defending, as Paul Heyman would say, Miranda Gordy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So Miranda, it's really awesome to have someone like you on our podcast who has so much experience, and you've obviously been around the block for some time now, and you've hold two different titles with I'm sure there are other titles as well that you'll tell us, or any other achievements, but thank you so much for your time. So how have you been during this entire lockdown thing and pandemic?
Oh, as far as I've been kind of lazy, not doing anything during the pandemic. But wrestling is my career. That's my career path. So with no live events, I've been pretty limited on getting in the ring and in front of crowds and stuff. So I have not been working as much. I've been doing where I'm staying. I have my own ring to practice in, and we've done some studio style shows with limited amount of people, and that's done all right, but it's not the same as being in front of a large crowd. So
of course,
luckily now things are starting to open back up somewhat, and I'm getting into it. Like last night we did a show in Texas, and so my schedule's starting to fill back out, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, that's great. So you have your own ring, like you got it built yourself, or is it some academy nearby where you used to train or something, or is it your own thing?
It is. So it's my boyfriend's. Where we live, he has it in his winery. He makes wine, and he has a big warehouse. Warehouse, and he trains people, and so he has a ring. I think he got it from High Spots or somewhere that you can order one and have it made and put in your house or your backyard or wherever. So it's a nice ring. It's really nice. So that's what we use to train and to do the studio style shows.
Okay. So have you, after this whole thing with the lockdown and everything, have you got anything done in that particular ring? Like any small show, anything you recorded in there?
Yes, we actually do a show. It's called Viral Pro. And I can always send you a link. It's a studio style, no audience. We have a couple of friends. We've done entire shows with 7 people, and we're super proud of it because we put a whole show together with 7 total people, cameraman and all, and the production is really, really good. So I'll send you a link and you can watch we've done some regular matches, and we've also done some theatrical stuff. So kind of what WWE is doing. We've done that. So that's kind of how we've spent our, pandemic time. So
it's the best way, just for somebody who loves the business and so on. I mean, that's basically a blessing to have, your own setup, because a lot of people don't have that option, and a lot of people are basically, I know some performers who used to live abroad, like they have their homes in like UK or so, and they were visiting outside, and due to this entire lockdown, they got stuck in UK. Like I know for a fact, like it happened to Sami Zayn, if you know Sami Zayn, and that poor guy got stripped off the title. So, it's kind of a blessing in disguise if you have your own ring. So, but going back to the roots a little bit with you, Miranda, is when did you actually realize, at what age, that this is what you wanted to do?
I got started in the business about 2.5 years ago. So I was like 28,
okay.
which is kind of late for a lot of people. But, growing up in the business and stuff, that's not the direction I wanted to head. Little did I know later on in life that it would be the best decision, that I ever made. So I guess it just took, the 28 years to figure that out. And obviously I'm succeeding. So I think I got here just in time. So it was, I started training in September of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've been doing matches like all around, traveling for about a year now. So.
Well, okay. And where were you trained? Like who trained you?
My trainer is, one of my trainers, his name is Knight Davis, and he has been like my main trainer for the whole time. He ran XCW in Texas, in Denton, Texas, and also at that school. It's now called the Dojo, but I've worked with Tom Howard, who has worked with like John Cena and Samoa Joe, and he trained Jack Black for Nacho Libre. So he's an amazing trainer. I've also worked with Ember Moon.
Okay.
Yeah, she, she had the injury, and in her spare time, she's been helping out at the dojo and running it and running classes and stuff. So I've worked with her a little bit too.
Well, that's I think great that you also have an experience like that. If I remember correctly, there were a few videos of like John Cena and when they were there in their early ages, when John Cena used to be like a prototype, stuff like that. And he had like these early training videos of him being trained at a local gym. I think that's where you're also mentioning that he trained it. There are also YouTube videos of him doing training, and you can barely recognize Cena at that time. I think that might be the person that we're referring to. I'm sure that if I send you the link or something, then you'll be able to recognize.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you, I'm sure it was out. I think that Tom trained John out in California, but I know like the early stages and stuff. That's when he was working with John and them. So, and they're hardly recognizable, until they get on TV. They're like a whole nother person.
Yeah, I mean the early stages were like even Orton. Okay, you can recognize Orton a little bit, but Cena was totally unrecognizable back in the days. So speaking of like back in the day, so you started back like 2 years ago and stuff like that. So before that, like before the entire wrestling dawned and all that thing, as a kid, were you into sports, or were you heavily into like just literature and studies and all that? What kind of life at that age that you were imagining for yourself?
So as a kid, obviously with my dad being who he was, I was like, professional wrestling's cool, and I would watch it. My heart has always been with animals. Like I wanted to become either a veterinarian or something like, go to South America and work on conservation and stuff like that. And then as I got older, I was like, there's no money in that. So, I mean, you got to really be passionate about it. And I do love animals. And I actually, before wrestling, I lived on a ranch and I rescued horses, and I would take in like other animals that people like would abandon and stuff. So I got to do the animal rescue for a while, and I love that. And I still have a horse, but I don't live out there, and I don't rescue horses anymore because I'm too busy wrestling now.
Okay.
But I went to college. I didn't get a degree, but my major was psychology. So I was going to go into like counseling and or somewhere in that sort of field. So that's that's kind of what I was venturing towards, and then I ended up here.
So the entire thing with psychology and everything, did that help you push through the entire, the aspect of pro wrestling? Because half of it is psychology and understanding and learning different aspects of it. So did that, you studying psychology, did that help you at all with wrestling in the initial stages?
Not really. It's kind of a different sort of psychology. When we say psychology in wrestling, it's basically how you are, and I don't have a better word, like manipulating the people into being drawn to you. So obviously in the psychology in school, it's how to treat like mental illness or stuff like that. So it's kind of a little different. Yeah. Psychology in wrestling, it's how you're getting fans or how the matches work. So, from like the shine and the heel and face stuff and all of that. So that's the difference in that.
Okay. All right. And while I was, doing some research before we started on our podcast, so your dad is also a wrestler, right?
Yes. Yeah. Terry Bam Bam Gordy of the Fabulous Freebirds, the WWE Hall of Famer. So.
Wow. Yeah. I noticed that. And I said, well, I recognize this guy. And I said, well, I know him, but why can't I remember his name? And I saw your last name. I was like, yes, I know him. And so so were you ever like invited, or did your dad like ever took you to any of the like WWF events? I'm sure you must have been to some of those.
Oh,
like back in the days.
Young. Yeah, I was very young. Now, he passed when I was 11, so he passed when I was still pretty young. But yeah, when I was a kid, whenever I could, I would go to. We went to WWF events and WCW events, and then like a lot of stuff. He did a lot of local things, like it would be indies, called the indies now. So a lot of independent promotions, really near the hometown. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so we didn't travel a lot with him because it's hard. It's different when you're actually working versus being a fan and going to a show, So, but yeah, sometimes I would go to the big events and see him.
Okay, because if my dad was Terry Gordy and part of this historically iconic group that has also been inducted into the Hall of Fame, was it ever a moment when you were at those events and you saw him coming down the aisle or just see the people's reaction like, dude, it's just my dad to me, but all these people, they're just, wow, they're just praising him and they're just, all this aura about him when he's in the ring. Did that ever happen to you?
That's exactly. Yes. So most people, I guess, see it from a fan perspective and they're like, oh, were you so excited? I mean, obviously as a little kid, I'm like, that's my dad. But, at the grocery store or like out in public, I'm like, this is just my dad. Why are these people wanting to talk to him? So I didn't see him as a big star or anything. I just like, that's my dad. Like sometimes he grounds me, sometimes I get in trouble. Like sometimes he buys me ice cream. So that's all he was to me.
Yeah, even Will Smith once said like he did this movie Suicide Squad about a year ago, and that's, according to him, that's the best action movie he did. And his son's response to seeing that movie was, "Yeah, it's all right." It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, you're my dad. I see you all the time. Yeah, it's all right. All right. So that also happened, and when finally time came for you to get into the ring and stuff like that, what was the first time you got into an actual wrestling ring from the training perspective, and what was that experience of the first day of training?
So obviously, I growing up, I've been in and out of rings and played around, and but as far as training, it was September of 2018 when I first started training. It was nothing like I thought. Obviously, I went into it with a more thinking it was going to be like more collegiate style, like the sport, like high school wrestling. And it does have some aspects of that, obviously. But the training is pretty intense. Like, they're athletes, and you have to train like an athlete if you don't want to get hurt, because safety is the biggest issue. It's a top priority, safety, and you have to learn that first, and you have to be in shape to do things properly, because even when they're done properly, it can be dangerous. So just learning that and learning the skill is super intense. So, and I know there's a lot of people that try it, but there's a reason that there's only people, like a few amount of people that make it to the very top, is because they've dedicated themselves to it. And that's what it takes. It takes a lot of dedication. And seeing it from, my perspective, growing up in it and seeing my dad and family members do it, and then like actually doing it is, it was like a whole nother world. I thought I knew, but I really didn't know. So different experience.
It's always that first bump. It's always that first bump that makes you realize I thought it was fake, but this is hurting, That's always that first bump that makes you realize, no, it's not a game. It's an actual real thing.
Oh, yes. And like, I remember the first time they had me do bumps. Obviously, your body, that's not a natural motion. So getting used to that, you go home the first week and you're like, do I really want to do this? And usually that makes or breaks, some people. And I stuck with it, but I was definitely in the bath like every night, like, oh my gosh, my back. So it hurt, but you get used to it and you toughen up and you get the strength to do it and perfect it. Yes.
And it with time, you really learn the craft. That's what people really don't understand these days, or, how you want to call them, millennials or stuff like that. I guess most a part of that group, technically. But people think that it's, just because they see somebody else doing it, it's like, it's easy, and stuff like that. But when we basically, just a little backstory, when we started back in 2013, before we actually started wrestling and training in a ring, we were about 25 people. The first day, we were 23 people. The next day, we were 18. The next week, we were 11. And then when we were doing our first house show with like 180 people, we were only about 5. So out of the 23, 25 people, only 5 stuck. And I'm one of them, basically. So it's just very bizarre to, go through that process. And that's what people don't understand. So what would you say to somebody who's just now starting? And what would be according to your experience so far, what would be the best advice that you can give to, not quit after like a few days of training?
Well, just like, any art or sport or craft that you want to start, keep trying. It's gonna suck. You're not gonna be a superstar the first day. You're not, it's gonna hurt, but just like anything else, like soccer or baseball or drawing or, any sort of craft that you want to perfect, stick with it. Take all the necessary steps to get to where you need, like go work out in the gym, learn the moves properly, learn good psychology, learn the footwork, dedicate just like you would any other craft or art.
That's great. That's great. I basically write down all these some questions that I think would be ideal to ask. One of those questions was parent support. Like, I have to check that off now, because obviously that's, it's not going to be something that you'll be worried about. The one thing that, people don't really get these days, and I think it's also something that's also going to die slowly. It has died a little bit, and that's something a little bit we call kayfabe. And I'm sure you've seen that in your dad's era, like in the WWF era, and then continued on in the WWE. But social media has ruined that for everybody. And so comparing like both generations, first your dad's and now yours, how would you say that it has impacted? Because now it barely exists. So what is your take on that? That it's not really a thing anymore, and people don't really take it very seriously.
Yeah, they don't. With social media, unfortunately, it has kind of died. Obviously, social media there's some benefits, and then there's, some downfalls with it. In my dad's era, they didn't have that. So it was, you could have that mystique, and you could, it was like a real fight. Like you really thought that people did not like each other and were ready to brawl in the ring, when it happened. And, unfortunately in the 90s, it kind of went away. Vince McMahon kind of killed it, and it was like, this is actually what happens. And, which it was on its way out anyway. So, now we just do things a little different. I think that fans they still suspend their belief, and they still, have the somewhat of a belief. They just kind of know that it's also not a real fight. Like, we're still wrestling, but they might have a drink later together, So I think the real diehard fans they still enjoy it. But that's kind of the biggest critique with my biggest critique with today's wrestling is people go and thank their opponent. And that's fine in some instances, but it's kind of saturated and taken away the mystique of it. So it's a little different for women, but we won't go there because women's wrestling is a little different. Also with the intergender thing, that's also kind of killed the kayfabe, in the sense that you have like smaller people, and not just women. There's some men that are smaller against these huge guys, and it just doesn't seem believable, which is also somewhat killing kayfabe. But I'm not here to judge. I'm just pointing it out. So it's whatever everybody else wants to do. But yeah, as far as what kayfabe was in my dad's day, that's pretty much gone.
Yeah, it is gone. I'm gonna thank a few people. I guess if we take time, we can thank the Young Bucks for doing that. Those two are probably at the top of the list for killing the kayfabe. But we all know it happened like in '97 when like Shawn and all these people, they were leaving for WCW and stuff like that. I'm sure you know what happened back then, but that's then. I also got pretty jealous with you for a hot minute while I was like picking out my stuff. I see you've met Mick.
Oh yes, yeah. I've met a lot of people over the years. Yeah, I met Mick. I met him when I was younger, but I got a picture with him like about this time last year. He's such a sweet guy. He's like a really good guy, obviously very knowledgeable. And it was fun to talk to him, and he had some good memories with my dad of a time they spent in Japan. And he just, hearing that stuff from legends like Mick Foley, or I've even got to sit down with someone like Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and for them to share that personally with me, that how my dad, either a memory or how like his wrestling impacted their wrestling, that's just it gets my heart, so I loved it. I love meeting Mick. I love meeting who else? I've met so many people this year that have just, they're like, we're cheering you on because we loved your dad, and so that's a support. I think you're gonna ask if I have parent support. Obviously my mom supports me. If my dad was here, I'm sure he would support me. But because of my dad's work and because of his reputation and how he helped people in the business, I think that, a lot of people are supporting me just because they love my dad. So, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And it is awesome that, you got the chance to meet all these great legends. Like, you mentioned Hunter, you mentioned Shawn. Like, I have this like a bucket list thing, because you probably all know that by now that I'm not in States. I don't know when I will be, but there are a few people that I want to meet. At least I want to, before I move on to the garden or pass away or whatever you want to call it, without making it dramatic, is actually Mick and Hunter. So I do want to meet these guys before there isn't any chance to do though. So how are, like, what would be the best thing you can say about, like, when they're off screen, in terms of like Hunter or Sean? So we know that they're all very great guys and stuff like that. But, like, what's the best thing about any of them? Like, especially Mick, because such a huge fan of Mick for such a long time.
I think in my experience, the coolest thing, I thought, like, they take time with the fans, and they understand. They're very humble, and they understand that the fans have gotten them to where they are, because without the fans, you wouldn't, they wouldn't be there. So the fact that I've met them in fan setting, like people were meeting and I just happened to walk up at the same time, and they were nice to everyone. So, and you can't say that about everyone, because some people don't keep that in mind. They don't have the humbleness, and those two guys, Mick and Triple H, are two humble guys.
Okay. All right. So now not only there's just WWE, we'll also have, like, AEW now in competition. I wouldn't say competition that much, because it just started like about a year or 2 years ago. So if you ever got the chance to either work with NXT or with AEW, which would you see yourself choosing?
Well, either one, honestly. I think in the future I will probably go for a tryout at NXT. Just because right now, WWE is kind of like the big time. They're the biggest running company. But I also would not mind AEW. They seem you only have to work one night a week. They seem more relaxed, and it's all people that have kind of been in the same position as me. Like, they all started in the indies for the most part. Some have not, but a majority of their talent has started from the bottom. They weren't just like picked up somewhere, they weren't trained by WWE. They started in the indies, and now they happen to be on TV. So they're probably more down to earth, which would be a great work environment. And they put on a good show. So, not that they're any less than WWE, but WWE does have a bigger platform. So it just depends. Like, I would take either one. I think they're both great. Okay. So wouldn't it impact, because your dad obviously has this great legacy with, like, the old WWF and then WWE. Because if I would assume that if you were to build yourself in NXT, and it's my gut feeling that they might go do the entire, Charlotte Flair thing with you, because they might build upon your dad's legacy. Because Terry Gordy, now here's Miranda Gordy. Do you think that might be something that you would be interested in, or you want to just do your own thing? Well, I mean, I already do that. I'm already, second generation. That's kind of my gimmick. Is I'm already doing that. It would be up to the WWE to decide if they wanted me to do kind of like they did Charlotte Flair and let her continue on the legacy. Or they could do, so my brother was also in the WWE as Jesse and
okay.
Yeah, so he took on a totally different role. A lot of people didn't realize that he was who he was. So they could also do something like that with me, and that would also be a big difference with AEW and WWE. I think in AEW, I would have the freedom to choose as opposed to WWE, where I would probably make more and have a bigger platform, but there's also the chance that they give me a gimmick that I may or may not like. And it may or may not be the fact that I'm, Terry Gordy's daughter. So that would be the risk with them.
Yeah, they might, and it has improved on their character buildings and stuff like that. But And back in the 90s, they were coming up with like the weirdest gimmicks. And we were kids. Like I was kid in the 90s. I didn't know what a gimmick was, but I remember Edge once said he was supposed to be sensational Adam. So that thank God that didn't happen. Otherwise, we would be having sensational Adam in the Hall of Fame, and I don't think that would have sit very well for his own character. Thank God that he did the entire Edge thing. In wrestling, there are different aspects, as we mentioned in before, that there are different aspects of wrestling. There is like lucha libre style and all these different styles of wrestling. Which one would you like prefer the most? Because so I would ask, like, are you more towards like the high flying stuff and taking things extreme, or are you more like something like what John Cena does? Because he's more grounded. He isn't that high flying. He isn't that doing that crazy moves, but what he does the best. So what is your preference in all of this?
The tapes and stuff that I usually watch and that I try to resemble and follow would be obviously my dad, but a lot of old school, basic work, but making it big, like making it meaningful, not doing a bunch of different stuff. Like, if you get a clothesline, it's a big clothesline and it hurts, and we're going to work that for a second and make it mean something. So when I grew up, my dad was going to Japan a lot. And so I grew up on All Japan, and I would take any of that style, anything from the All Japan with Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, Terry Gordy, even Masawa. Like they did more high flying stuff because they were smaller, but I would totally, if I could choose someone that I could totally be like, I think any of those guys, Kenta Kobashi, all of them, that would be like my idols and who I would like to resemble.
I think the guy that I personally followed the most out of the Japan scene was Kota Ibushi, and he did such a great work in like PWG. He was in PWG, I think. He was also in like Chikara, and I'm not sure what he's doing right now. I kind of lost track of him, sometime after, but one of the best athletes. But also one of the things that stands out with people, working in Japan or with Japanese wrestlers is that they don't give a damn. They just go for it. They don't really care about it. They just want to put on a show. It doesn't matter if your chest is bleeding. They just want to go at it. Yes. That's one thing. So you would also like be into that?
I think so. I think that it was half a shoot, like it's half real, and I think that with my size and just how I feel about it, like what I think I would like to show is that style. I think that would fit me a lot. So that's obviously it's kind of toned down. It's hard to do now unless you are in Japan or something, but I got to go to Japan in February, and obviously everybody was like, "Oh, it's half a shoot. You're gonna have to be prepared." And everyone was super nice to me, so I was a little disappointed. I prepared to like kind of fight a little bit, but I didn't get the chance to. So now I kind of want to find a place to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it can only happen in Japan because, well, we all have Nakamura's example, because they toned down Nakamura so much that you don't really know most of his stuff now. Like most of his moves are like with Japan that he is not allowed to do in WWE. So with that being said, what is your schedule going to be like once the schedule and this pandemic and everything is over? Are you going to be working with the companies again? Are you going for you're shooting for Japan? What will be the schedule once all of this is over?
For now, just traveling all throughout the country, like for the indie scene, wherever I'm booked. Obviously, trying to maintain the titles and having title matches and stuff in Texas, and then Tennessee for USA Championship. And then hopefully whenever everything opens back up, I get to go back to Japan or travel to other countries, because that would be, traveling is like one of the big reasons I got into this, because I've always loved traveling. So if I can do what I love in new places and have new experiences, I think that's what I'm going to do.
So it's like, if you are open to, such experiences, would you be interested in coming to like country like us? Because we do have something planned for like later this year, and if we get a chance, we'd love to have you here.
Oh, I would love to travel to Pakistan. Like, I love your culture. Like, I love your people. Like, I've had a lot of Pakistan friends, like friends from Pakistan, and I would love to visit. So yes, absolutely.
Oh, really? So you have friends, like people live in Pakistan and they became your friends, or they're from US and you know them from the local stores and stuff like that?
I've had a few friends that like they were a child, like they were born in Pakistan and then became citizens over here. So yeah. So I mean, I don't know a whole lot, but the very small that I do, like, it's very interesting. I love learning new cultures.
Yes, definitely the culture is one of them. Second, we love to eat. Third, the food is pretty spicy. So anything,
I like it.
so anything like, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I like the different spices and stuff. So that's one of the, I'm a foodie too. That's one of the experiences when I get to travel. I try new foods. So.
Oh, definitely. Like, once I'll probably send you a link or something. There is a vlogger from US who came here, and she did like the vlog on the type of foods that's basically here in this city that we live in. It's called Karachi. It's basically the biggest city of the country. I think second biggest in Asia, the biggest in the country. So after Beijing, this is the second biggest city. So I'll send you that. So you mentioned about like the titles and everything, because we have a little time available, only like a couple minutes here. So I just want to get in these last couple questions here. So speaking of when titles came into the picture and everything, the first time you were informed that, all right, so this is going to happen and you're going to pin and you're going to take the title. What was that like? What was the initial thought that came to your mind? Like, holy crap, I'm going to be a champion. Like, I'm going to have a title. What was that experience that you first get to know about it?
I was super excited and honored that they would, because the champ represents the company, so
Exactly.
and it's a somewhat of a responsibility to uphold and act professionally and act like a champ. So I was super honored that they would want me to represent their company like that. And obviously super excited. And my family was excited. I have a daughter and a nephew, and they're kind of into it, and they're super excited that I get a belt. So it was fun. It was a nice experience, and I'm glad to be their champ.
Well, that's great. I'm sure they'll be glad to have you as their champion as well. So when that, so there are two different sides to it. So there's one part where you get told that you're going over and you're getting the title. And then there is a part of, there's part of the wrestler in their head where if, unless it doesn't happen, it seems like, it's not real. All right. They're telling me, but, hopefully it happens. But until the match is over and I have the title, it probably doesn't seem like it's real. So when it did happen and you got to the third pin and they handed over you the title, like, was it like the moment that you like, yeah, I made the right choice. I am where I belong.
Oh, absolutely. Even though I knew I was getting the title and like, you see it, but just being in the moment and being in the middle of the ring and having people cheer you on, you're on top of the world, even for just a few seconds. And that's what it felt like I'm the champ, so, and you still feel that way, even though, it's coming, you still get to see people's expressions and even my kiddo's expression, she was super excited. So it's fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, that's great, I'm sure, and I hope that you'll get many of these experiences in your future, wherever you go and whatever you choose to, like whichever company you choose to work with. I'm sure you're gonna be pretty successful, and I'm sure your dad would be so proud right now that you're doing so well in something that he also used to do. So the last thing on that is the things that are rarely with the indies, that are not really common with big promotions like WWE, is an intergender match, and you kind of gone over that a little bit. So if opportunity arrives, would you be interested in doing one of those matches?
Oh, absolutely. And I do them all the time. And I work really well with men. I'm also I'm built bigger and wider than a lot of girls. So it works with the right size guy for me to do an intergender match. Like it looks somewhat believable. Now, obviously I couldn't wrestle someone like Brock Lesnar or Drew McIntyre because I'm not that big. But as far as it's a guy my size, it's definitely believable and doable. And I do intergender all the time and I enjoy it. So I'm not against it. I just think obviously make it believable,
Yeah, and if you are trying to make it believable, definitely avoid working with Joey Ryan. That's one guy that's gonna that's one guy you don't want to have an intergender match with. But with that being said, Miranda, we're actually at the final 2 minutes of the podcast. Well, I just hope that we had more time, and unfortunately, you're also on the road, and so we have a little bit of time. So we have like the last 2.5 minutes or so. And usually, what we do is at the end of the podcast, I do this very quick special lightning round with every guest. And so what it is that I just ask you, lightning questions. And so you don't have the time to think, and you just answer the first thing that comes into your mind.
Okay.
All right. So are you ready? Let's begin.
Yes. All right.
So the first question. Texting or talking? What would you prefer?
Texting.
Texting. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, since you are in a car, I'm not sure if you are going to drive it or not, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver you are?
Oh, I think I am 8. I think I'm pretty good. So.
Okay. All right. You never got a ticket or something? I'm sure you did sometime.
I've had a ticket before, but I still think I'm an okay driver.
Okay, all right. So it is still very good number. All right. At what age do you want to retire? I mean, you just got started, so it's a hypothetical question.
Maybe like 55. I think that's a good age.
55. All right.
Yeah.
unless you're Ric Flair, I mean, the guy just keeps going. He doesn't seem to have. All right. If you were to have a superpower, right, the X-Men type superpower, what would you choose? Invisibility or flying?
Ooh, flying.
Flying.
I think flying. Right. Yeah.
Invisibility would have been more useful, All right. Maybe. All right. Next question.
If I needed to travel a lot, flying.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I personally would have picked invisibility because I would have solved a lot of my cases by then. But all right, let's moving on. What is your first celebrity crush? Could be anybody.
Ooh, that's hard. George Clooney. George Clooney's a good-looking guy.
It is, but he did Batman, so it's kind of a DNA for me. All right. Then the next question, your favorite junk food?
Have I ever what?
Your favorite junk food?
Oh, hamburger, junk food. Okay. Pizza.
All right. All right, then we got the next question here, which is, I guess, pretty much the most important question. If you were about 78 years old, like 70, 71, and you have your kids and your grandkids, one word advice that you would give them, or not one word, like one sentence advice that you would give them based on your life experiences.
I would tell them, just be kind to everyone, no matter what. Just even if someone's unkind to you, just keep being a kind person, because it always pays off in the end. So just be kind. We need that right now.
Okay. Well, that's good. We definitely need that right now. And now is the best time to be kind to one another, But thank you so much, Miranda. That was our lightning question round, and you did pretty great. And you're also the sole winner of the round, because you're also the sole, member of the round. So at the end of the round, like if somebody wins something, you have to give them something because they're the winner. Unfortunately, since we're virtual and I only have this piece of paper that I write my stuff on, I will give you, on behalf of all of my company, the best of wishes, and whatever you choose to do with your kids and everything, we give you the best of wishes, and we hope to see you at a bigger platform, say like WWE or AEW or wherever you want to go. We'll follow you, we'll support you, and we'll cheer for you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Miranda. So that was our episode number 29 for the Podcast of Awesomeness. We were joined by Miranda Gordy. I'm sure great legacy she's going to build for herself in the future. So thank you so much for everybody else who was watching. 1 second. Oh, we also got a few comments. Oh, our chairman, you also met him before, Mr. Vibe. He says, thank you for coming, Miranda. Good luck for your future. All right, and one other question we have for you: which one was better, WWE or WCW in live events?
Ooh, I think that WWE or WWF has always been the innovator. So that's just my personal choice. Mm-hmm. I think at one point they were both really great.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, those were the two questions that I received on the back, so I thought I'll ask you. All right. Well, on that case, everybody who's watching this episode, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you like our podcast, please share it with everybody. Tell them about Miranda. Tell them to go see her stuff, and please like her videos and tell her in the comments how good she is, because we already know how good she is. All right. Well, that being said, we're at the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining, Miranda.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miranda. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.